everyone, this is Annie over at Stamp Anything, and today we're going to create this adorable slimline card featuring two new stamps of Violet and Girls Just Want to Have Fun. I went ahead and I stamped them on my stamping paper in the size for my slimline. And we're going to start with our image, and we're going to go ahead and just start coloring up our young girl. This is Violet, and we are using our 𝐒𝐬𝐴. And I am going to start laying down in the little shadow areas of her body part the darkest color with this 𝐒𝐿4. And you can see I'm just adding them into pretty much like the nooks and crannies and in the darker folds of where shadow would hit. And now I'm going to go in with my 𝐒11. And I'm going to go over the exact coloring that I just did with that 𝐒𝐿4 and then extend it just a little bit further to start blending the two colors together. And now I'm going to repeat with my 𝐒21, just going over the past two colors and extending out a little bit further. And this is just the whole technique you keep doing to keep building up your layers. Now we're going to follow up with our 𝐒00. Again, just going over what colors were already made and extending it out. And then our final color is our 𝐒000. And now we'll just fill in the rest of the area with this lightest color, blending all of the other layers together. Now I always like to go over and do my colors twice, just so I get a really enough contrast, especially in my shadow areas. So again, with my 𝐒𝐿4, laying down those darker areas. Back in with my 𝐒11. And then my 𝐒21. And you should be able to start seeing that the second layer blends a lot better than the one you had when you just did the one layer. Your colors will look more vibrant. The blend is going to be more smooth. And now back with our 𝐒00. And then finishing it off with our 𝐒000. And then we have the body of our little girl all completed. And now we're going to do just a little adding of the shadow areas because I really want the indent on her little knee to pop a little bit more. So I'm just adding and blending it out to get that little indentation. And just doing that second layer with those darker colors. Now we're going to go ahead and we'll start on her face. So the same color combination. It is our 𝐒04. Again, first layer, layering in where we want our darkest shadows to be. So I'm going to go on the underside of her hairline because that's where the shadow would fall. And a little bit down the sides of her face. Don't forget to get her little ears done. And now we're going to go in with our 𝐒11. And again, just go over those same exact lines that you just laid down and extending it out just a little bit further to start getting those blends to go and work. And I also now start to do the round area of my eye. just so I can start building in that circle around her eye with the layers. Now our 𝐒𝐿, again, over what you've already done, extending it out a little bit further. And again, going around the eyes to start softening that line as well. Now our 𝐒𝐿, just blending where the last color was, fanning it out so it starts getting smoother. And now we're going to add in our cheek color. So with our R22, I'm just going to go from the upper eyelash to the sides of her little cheek area, to like where the top of your cheekbone would be. And then I go in with my R21. And this is when I start to go around the bottom rim of that eye and around the cheeks to add the color of her little cheeks. And go slowly around that eye so you can keep that white area around her eye as close as possible as you can. You can always clean that up with your colorless blender. And now to soften those edges, you go back with your 𝐒𝐿 and you're just going to fan out that R21 so the blend is smooth. And also connect the two parts of the eye from the top and the bottom to get that circle complete. And now you're going to go in with your 𝐒𝐿 and just fill in the rest of her area. Again, that's only one coat, so it's not going to be as smooth. So we do the same process and we just repeat everything all over again. So our 𝐒𝐿 on the little ears and under that hairline. And the reason we do the 2 layers is now your paper is going to be saturated with the ink. So now that you lay in your second layer, the blend is going to be easier to blend because the paper is going to absorb the ink much better. And it also kicks up the color another layer because you're adding 2 layers of the same colors. So here's your 𝐒11, just going over those 𝐒04s like we did in the first layer. Now we're going to go and grab our 𝐒21. Again, just repeat, extending out further as you go, blending that rim of the eye. And now back to our cheeks again. So our R22, just on the top area of the cheeks, the highest part. And then fanning it out. I'm going to grab that R21. And again, slowly going around the bottom rim of the eye and fanning it out towards the center of her face. Now we're going to grab our 𝐒𝐿 and we're going to blend our skin on the top, connect the top eye to the bottom eye, and fan out the peak in her cheeks. And then lastly, our 𝐒𝐿, just connecting everything together and softening all the blends. And there you have your little girl and her cute skin. Okay, so now we're going to move on and we're going to start her hair. So I have 𝐒𝐿 and I am just going to make from the roots and the corners of her hair a couple little straggles of lines coming out where the darkest part of her hair is going to overlap and in the dark root areas and the bottom tips of her hair. And you just want to follow the curves of the lines that are already drawn in for you so you know the direction of how her hair is falling. And again, this is with your 𝐒𝐿 and you're just making short little straggle stroke marks in there to start the color. Then we're going in with our 𝐒𝐿 and I'm just going on top of the lines I already made and extending them out a little bit further, now flicking a little bit more towards the center. And you go over the lines that you already drew or colored in there because this will now lighten and soften up the hardness of the line. So your blend will be smoother and more cohesive with your colors. Now I'm going to go in with 𝐒𝐿 and same thing, going over the colors I've already laid down. And you can start to see a variation of all the different shades of the brown in this hair with the light and the dark and the medium. Now I'm going to take some 𝐲𝐢𝐿 to add some highlight burst of color, and I'm just going to do this on the edge, but I am going to have it very sparingly go through the whole length of the hair. And this is just going to give it a little bit extra kick and color variation with a little bit of a highlight. And now I'll take my 𝐒𝐿 and I'm actually just going to color in the whole entire area, filling in any areas that might have been left white that were not colored in. And then this is also going to soften all of the edges of your other color blends. And now I'm going to take that 𝐒𝐿 and start the same process again on the next section of her hair in the dark areas where the roots would be and in the undersides of any of the hairs. So this little area behind her ear, and then back with our 𝐒𝐿, going over the same lines you just made, but extending them further towards the center. And then your 𝐒𝐿, same process. Again, just now going even further towards the center. So you can see the dark going into the medium, going into the light. Now we're going to take that 𝐲𝐢𝐿 just to amp up the color a little bit, adding a little bit more depth and variation with our tone. And now we will take that 𝐒𝐿 and again going over any areas that were left uncolored so the white was showing through and softening up any of the hard edges of our darker colors. Now I'm going to go back with 𝐒𝐿 to just darken up to really make a contrast in the edges of her hair. And you are going to lightly flick towards the center so that when you're flicking towards the center and you're lifting up at the edge, it's a fine flick action, so it's not a thick line that you're leaving there. And then my 𝐒3_1, going over and just smoothing it all out. And now you can see from the one section of her hair to the other how that just kicks it up a notch with more variation and depth in the coloring. So again, that 𝐒𝐬𝐺𝐢9, you're just flicking, and I flick away from myself better than I flick towards myself because I get that finer line when I'm lifting the marker away from myself as opposed to pulling it towards me. Some people work the opposite. They get a better flick pulling it towards them. So you just have to practice on a spare sheet of paper to see which flick direction you get that finer flick. There's no right or wrong way. It's just whatever way you have the better flick action. And then that 𝐒3_1 again, just to tie it together. Now I forgot this little section underneath the back of her head. So it's going to be a dark area anyways. So I'm just going to use the two colors just to do it quickly. Okay, so now we have to do the little curls of her pigtails. So we're going to start the process all over with our 𝐒3_9. And we're just going to go at the tops from the roots, a little squiggle down the center, and then all the way to the tip. And just, again, follow the lines that are already drawn there for you so that you get the motion of the hair the way it's intended to be. And now we're going to use our 𝐒3_5. And we're going to go over the lines we just created all the way down. Now this is a much smaller section than the top part of her hair, so it's going to fill up a lot quicker with your markers. So don't get too heavy-handed because you still got to get all these colors in here. So now our 𝐒3_3. I'm just using it lightly, soften up some areas. Our 𝐲𝐢𝐿7, just to get that mid-tone in there, to start to punch up that color. And then our 𝐒31, to blend and smooth it all out and to fill in any areas that you might still have white showing. Okay. And now we're just going to grab that 𝐒𝐺𝐢9 and we're just going to darken up those roots, a little wiggle down the center, all the way to the tip, just to get that contrast color in there. And you can see the difference that it makes. So the hair doesn't look so flat if we didn't put it in there. And then our 𝐒3_1, and just gonna go over it to soften the line. And then we have our sweet little girl with her beautiful hair. So now we're going to move into our, do our tongue really quick. So I'm just going to fill that in with an �R37. And then I just want to add a darker tone off to the right. So my �R59, just to give a little variation in her tongue. And then back to that �R37 just to blend it out. And now we're going to do her outfit, and we're also going to do her outfit in reds. So we're going to use our R59, and then her little pigtail bauble balls. I don't know what you call these things. I don't have daughters. I only have sons, but the little pigtail ornament things. We are just layering in our shadow areas with our R59. Then with our R37, you're going to go over those areas and start blending out. And now we're going to grab our R32, which is out of ink. So we're going to put that aside. You guys keep continuing either with your R32. I'm just going to go down to R22. Start adding that little bit of the contrast with the highlight coming in. And now my R30, R30. Blending it out so that there's cute little highlights on each of the little baubles of these hair ties. I'm going to go over it again because these are more pink than red and I want them more red. So I am going to go over it again, this time starting with that R37 because the R59 is already in there. And I'm just going to push more of the red color in there so less pink is showing. So you just see the pink more as a highlight on them as opposed to the full color. So now my R22 to blend out that R37. And then you can see how it's toning it down where now it's going to look more red. And this is what's great about coloring. And when you do your second layers, the things that didn't work the first time around, you still have time to change it. Mine just looked too pink and I didn't want it pink. I want her to be wearing a red outfit sitting on those green dollar bills. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our R59 and start her outfit. So we're going to start layering in our shadows. So we're going down the little the shadow area in her sleeves and then onto the body part of her little shirt here, and then she's going to have a shadow above where her legs are covering her body, and then around that knee and underneath this little collar area. So that was our R59. Then we're taking our R37 and we are going over the lines we just created and extending it out further. Blending out that R59 so it's not so harsh. Then our R22. Start blending it more. Now because I went from the R30s down to an R22 because my 32, it was out of ink, I have to work it a little bit more than if I used my 32. So if you're using your 32, your blend will be smoother than what mine is appearing on camera. But you got to use what you got and make it work. So I had to use that 22. So as you can see, I have really hard lines right now because my blend from that 37 down to the 22 just was not working for me. So I'm just going to fix and cover up as much as I can and get less of that pink in there showing. That way I have a smaller area that I have to actually work my blend, and that'll fix my problem. And then just blend it all together with that R30. So you really just have to know your colors, what blends are going to work, and if you have to make a quick fix, how you can do so. And now we're just going to do her shoes really quick. And I'm just going to use that R59 on one side of it and then blend it into that R37. So her shoes does not have much area in it, but I try to get that little bit of a gradation of the dark into a lighter. So now we're going to start on the money, which is going to be some fun. And I chose to do some YGs as opposed to just my Gs because, you know, money is kind of like a sage type color green. It's not a forest green. So I wanted to use these duller greens. So I'm going to start with my 𝐲67. And I'm going to lay down where the money, the sides are. I'm going to lay down the bottom part of each stack of bills and up the side, like so. And I'm just going to go down the whole tower of money, following this same pattern. So down that side of the money and then the bottom. And then, as you can see, some of the money is it's not stacked completely straight. So these ones that are going in a little bit further are going to be a little bit darker on that side area. So we're going to do those darker in a little bit. So now we're going to take our 𝐲63 and we're going to start fanning out our 𝐲67 on those bills that were sticking out the furthest where the light hits it more, because those other ones are going to be tucked under, so they're going to need to be a little bit darker with not as much light hitting on them. So here's our 𝐲63. And now we're going to finish with our 𝐲61 and just color in and blend those side areas of our money. Now, if you don't have a really smooth blend, don't worry about it, because we're going to go back, because we're going to add lines to these stacks of bills to make it look like, you know, there's actually stacks of money in each of these individual stacks. So it doesn't need to be perfectly blended. If you want a smoother blend, you would go ahead and do the 2 layers like we did on her hair and her skin. But since I know I'm going to be covering it up, you don't necessarily have to do the 2 layers. So I'm just going to continue blending in the side of this money, just so it has that little bit of variation with the 3 markers that I chose. And now we're going to go and do the front sides of the bills. So back to that 𝐲67, and we're just going to start pulling down the side on the front of all of these bills. So just pull in the darkest color going towards your center of your bills. And let's see. That bill is sitting underneath the one on top of it. So we're just going to do the bottom a little bit darker because it would be getting hit with the shadow. And it's okay, you don't have to go crazy with a lot of details with all of the shading here, because the focus point is going to be your girl and her hair, which is where people's eyes usually tend to be drawn. So when you're doing that, you don't have to go crazy with details on other areas of your card, because the eye is going to naturally be drawn to certain areas. So now with that 𝐲63, we're just blending out and fanning out further towards the center of our stack of bills. And I'm basically doing the sides and then heavier down on the bottom edge. And that is so when I go with my 𝐲61, the top of the bill on the side of the bill, but the top side of the bill is actually going to be where the highlight is hitting with the light. I really should have been, I wasn't paying attention. I should have been coloring left to right, so my arm was not blocking what I was already coloring, and I apologize for that. I just was not thinking it through. I was more trying to make sure I was just on camera and I wasn't out of frame, but now I realize my hand is what is in the frame, so I apologize for that. Okay, so now we have that side of our money. And now we're going to do these stacks that are indented a little bit more. So they're going to be darker. So we're going to take that 𝐲𝐷67 and we're going to use that to color in the side of that whole stack right there. Because no light is hitting it, because it is underneath the overhangs of those other bills on top. Okay. And then now that we did the sides, we need to go and do the fronts of these bills. So we're just going to do the same site, pulling it down, but we're only going to use our 2 colors, I believe. We're going to see how that looks, just so that they stay darker than the other ones in front. And now your 𝐲𝐷63, and just color in and fill in the rest of that bill. And again, it's just a little detail that, you know, they're not all exactly the same color and highlighting in the same areas. It just adds more variation that some are darker than others. But it really shows up in the coloring that you took the time to do that little bit of a detail, as you can see, as opposed to just coloring it all the same. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to start the other side of the bills. So again, with that 𝐲𝐷67, because the light is all coming from the left to the right, the darker area, so we're going to continue that with the darker going into the lighter. So from the center of that money band, excuse me, the center of the money band down is where we're going to start with that 𝐲𝐷67. And just pulling it down towards the outer edge of the money. And then you're going to look for the ones that are a little bit darker, the ones that are hidden a little bit more, and just make them a little bit darker. So you can see I don't have them all ending with the same line of the gradation. And again, that's because that just adds a little bit of a detail that some have darker areas than other. So on those darker ones, we're just going to finish coloring the whole bill with that 𝐲𝐷63. And then on the other bills, we're just going to start blending that 𝐲𝐷63 out. And then we'll finish that up with our 𝐲𝐷61. And so here's the last color, the 𝐲𝐷61, and we're just going to blend out the whole rest of the front face of those bills. And you can really tell now in the coloring the variation of the colors on those bills. Again, I'm only doing the 1 layer. If you did this as 2 layers, they would blend even better. But I'm going to hide a lot of it with a colored pencil, which I'll show you in a little bit later, after we're done coloring more of the monies. But you can continue. You don't even have to add those details if you want, if you like it like this. I like how the light is hitting. Okay, and now with my 𝐤𝐺61, I'm just going to go on the tops of the bills that are hanging over. It's such a small, narrow space. It didn't warrant trying to get detail in there. If you had a lot of patience and you wanted to do so, by all means you could. But again, it's such a small area that the detail would not show up. Your eye is not going to be drawn to those tops of those little dollar bills. It just isn't. It's a small area. So I am just going to color it all solid in my 𝐤𝐺61. Now the very, very top bill, the one that she's sitting on, does have some of the surface area showing. So I'm just going to take that 𝐤𝐺63 and I'm just going to color in the little bit of the design that I put on the dollar bill when I drew the stamp, which is those circles. And I'm actually, again, I am doing the 2 layers. I just waited a second before I added another just so that they were a little bit darker. And that's about all you're going to do on that money. Later on, we'll come in with that pencil. Now we're going to do the bands. So I'm going to use 𝐒37 and 𝐒31. Again, not a lot of details on these because it's not something that's going to pull your eye to them, but just enough to show you a variation. So with that 𝐒37, I am just going to go and draw a line on the outer edge of the left side of each band, like so. And I'm just going to go and continue this all the way down. So just hitting the left side on each band. Oh, forgot the one on top. Okay, and now I'm going to take that 𝐒31 and color in the rest of the band and blend that 𝐒37 out, just so it gives a little bit of a variation with some shadowing. But again, it's such a small piece of the stamp. It's not going to pull your eye to them, but it will add that more, a little bit of dimension and a little added detail that people will notice. And it just brings your coloring not to look so flat. And as you can see, it just adds a little bit of a 3-dimension to it with that darker brown going into the lighter. And I'm just running down with that 𝐒31 one more time just to get a better and smoother blend. And those are the outer edges of your money bands. Okay, now we're going to do the inside of our money bands. And I am going to be using some blues. So we have our B01. Don't mind my marker. I had a bad leak, as you can tell. And I'm just doing the B01 on the left side of the band. And then I'm going to go grab my B000, 4 zeros, and blend out that B01 into the white. So it just adds a very, very subtle blue hint to those bands. And then you can take your colorless blender and you just hit the sides to blend it so it looks like it's basically going into nothing. It just flows white into the white. Okay, so now it's piggy time. And I wanted not to do it in a bubblegum pink pig. I wanted to do it, since the greens were kind of a muted green, I wanted to do it a muted pink. So I'm using RV99, And I am just going to go on the sides and underside of those little feet. And then we're using our next color, RV95. And then RV93. And then we're going to finish it off with RV91. And it's a small area, and it probably doesn't read very pink at this time, but when we get to his body, it'll read more like a mauve-y type pink. And again, I just wanted to keep the whole muted color palette together instead of having a bright pink with it. So here's my RV99 again, and I am just now going to layer my darkest shadow area, and I'm not going to be putting a lot of it down, just up the one side of his body and the little part of his tail, and then on the one side of the ear where the light would hit it. And that's all I'm doing for my darkest, because it is going to be a little bit harder to blend out. So now I'm going to get my RV95. And I'm going to start blending out the shadow edge and getting the piggy to start getting colored. So we're just starting to get some of this color towards the center of the pig body. Now we'll take our RV93 and we're just going to start blending it out even further towards the center. These colors blend really, really well together, but like I said, it's a very, very muted mauve type color. And then our RV91. And you can always change the colors and use brighter greens for your money and a brighter pinks, and then when you even get to the coins, you can use really bright yellows. But I just like the whole idea of the muted colors with her sitting on top being more vibrant in her coloring. So I'm just going over my pig. And that RV99, I'm just going to color in the slot, the money slot, and his eyeball. And then I'm just going to fan out a little bit more with the RV95. And then go back with the RV93. Just to get that smoother blend, and then the RV91, and just tie it all together. And there is our cute little piggy bank. Now we're going to do our coins. And I love doing gold because sparkle and gold can be a lot of fun. And you want to start with a dark color. And for me, it's E25. And I'm just layering down on the sides of these coins. And then on the parts of the coins that are under others, I'm going to go a little bit further. And you're probably like, why is she using brown on coins? Well, when you start using your yellows, they just blend really great. So here's your Y35, and you're going to start seeing, I don't know if it'll show up on camera as well as when you're doing it on your own paper, but just watch how this yellow changes the brown. It mutes it down, and then it comes like a darker yellow to a medium yellow, and now we're using our Y13 to fill in the rest of the coin. So you really get this great gradient of 3 shades of gold, even though your first color was a brown. It's not showing up on camera as well as I would have liked, but if you just did it in your coloring, we're going to do the next one with you. Once again, next tower coin. And you should be able to see this in your own coloring right in front of your eyes, how that brown turns into a beautiful muted gold. So the brown is just down the side, your Y35 is over the brown and then to the center of your coins, like so. So you went over your brown color, and then this Y13, you go over all of it, and it just makes this amazing gradient of gold. Now our last stack here, again with that E25, all the way down on the left side of your coins. Then your Y35, covering that E25 to the center of the coins. And then your Y13, covering all of it and blending it to get that beautiful gradation. And there is our card so far. Okay, so now we're going to do the stripes and the money. So you will need a super sharp colored pencil, which is what I'm going to use. But if you do not have a colored pencil, and make sure it's really sharp because you want a sharp point, you can also use like a fine point pen. And I've done this before as well, just with a regular black ballpoint pen. I love the zebra pen. It's got a great point on it if you get the fine point kind. And you're just going to start flicking in lines on your dollar bills. And they are not straight, and they are not from tip to tip. I mean, they don't even have to be perfectly on the edges. It's just to hint that there's stacks of money in each of these stacks. And the ones that are on the underside, you're going to add a little bit more pressure to your pencil so those lines come out a little bit darker than the ones on top. And now we need to do the front sides of our paper money here. So we're just going to continue with those lines. You can see you don't got to go all the way edge to edge. When you have a lighter highlight, you want to just go a little bit lighter. So you're going to control the pressure of your pencil. Some areas are going to be darker because they're in the shadow areas, and then some of them are going to be in the lighter areas, so you're going to use less pressure so it doesn't cover up all of your highlight. Now when I go on this side, because I am going from the lighter side to the darker, I'm just going to use a lighter pressure on all of this just in general, because I am hitting all of the light areas as opposed to on the other side of the tower, we were starting from the dark going into the light. Now we're going the light into the dark. So I'm just barely hitting my pencil. And you can see that this just adds a whole new level of detail to your coloring, and your eye actually focuses on the money more so now than if you had left it plain. And I just love little details like that in coloring. So now what I'm going to do is we are going to grab, my paper trimmer really quick, because I am going to fix my other one that I cut and stamped onto my mat, which if you were prepped prior, you would have yours already done. And this is going to be on the inside of our card. And I just want to add some fun color to this as well, to those dollar bills. So we're just going to color in the $4 bills. with the same greens that we had, just so that when you open the card, there's a little funness in there as well. So let's get back our green markers. And we're going to start with our 𝐲𝐸𝐧𝐧𝐞. And we're going to start, oops, okay, that was out of frame. We're going to start with the dark areas of the money. So this is a curved dollar bill. So the curve is going to have darker on it as the bill is curving. And then we're going to take our medium color, which is our 𝐲𝐸𝐧𝐸63, and finish coloring that outside of the dollar bill. And then our 𝐲𝐸𝐧𝐸61, going to finish coloring it and color in the top side of the bill as well. Not like a whole lot of shadowing and effect on here either, just to add a pop of color so your inside of the card isn't so plain. And now we're going to go ahead on this bill with our 𝐲𝐸𝐧𝐸67. We're going to do the underside in our dark color. And then up one of the sides. And then we're going to take our 𝐲𝐸𝐧𝐸63 and start going up the side to the lighter area. Then just finishing the outer edge of that dollar bill. And I'm just going to darken the darker areas a little bit more. And then our 𝐲𝐸𝐧𝐸61, and I'm just going to lightly color the inside. So we have a little bit of a gradation of those greens. Now we're going to go down to the bottom. And with that 𝐲𝐸𝐧𝐸67, again, where the money is curving and where it folds over is going to be the darkest areas. Our 𝐲𝐸𝐧𝐸67 to go around the rest of the outside of the money. And then 𝐲𝐸𝐧𝐸61 for the inside part of the bill. Super cute. And then our last one over here, that 𝐲𝐸𝐧𝐸67. So we're going to do all the parts that are underneath the lettering over here. And then our 𝐲𝐸𝐧𝐸63 for the rest of that band. And then our 𝐲𝐸𝐧𝐸61 to fill in the rest. And there are your dollar bills. So I just want to add a little bit more detail and a little bit more color contrast to mine. You can stop at this point or you can continue with me, but I want to put like a haze around her. So I am going to take my B01 and all I'm going to do is I'm going to start flicking out from the sides of the drawn stamp line with that B01, because I'm just going to blend it all out to give her a haze type around her, just so it looks like she's just not sitting on plain white paper. And then you're going to go and grab your B_0, your 0000, and I am just going to start blending out that B01, and you can use your chisel end if you need to as well. Now for me, my nib end is saturated more than my chisel end. So you'll see me going back and forth, and that's just so that I can get the area wet and then work it better with my chisel end. If my chisel end had more ink on that side because it was drying out, I would have just used the chisel end to do the whole thing. But again, you work with what you got. Sometimes I don't realize my markers are almost on empty until I'm doing one of these videos, and then I know I have to go fix it. But I'm just going ahead and I am just adding that haze, and you can see it starting to come to life more now with that little bit of a blue haze around the girl. And I'm just going to continue this on the bottom. There's my 𝐵_0, just to really start getting it to blend out. This is the trials and tribulations of working with a drying out marker. And hopefully I have this in a refill, and I do not know because I do use this technique on quite a bit just to be able to give a pop more to my cards. But this effect of giving the haze looks really great also if you do them in yellows, just more of your pale pastel-y type colors. And you just want to make sure you're using a color for the haze that's going to complement the color of your image. And that's really all there is to it. Again, you don't have to do this if you don't want, but I just like that it makes it feel a little bit more grounded for me than opposed to it just the image being colored without anything around it. And that's just a personal preference. But I just love it because it softens the whole thing, because when you're blending it out into the haze, the edges get really, really, really soft. And if you find that yours are not getting soft very well, after you do this technique, you can take your colorless blender and just go over the very, very far edges, and that will also soften it up a lot. Sorry, I'm off camera here. I didn't realize that. But again, this is probably the only time I ever use my chisel end of markers, is when I'm doing these haze effects. And there is that, and I just got to do inside this little piggy hole. And then inside her little underside here of her hair, and the money and her clothes area. There we go. And we're nearly done. Now you can see just how that blue little haze I think just adds a little bit more to it. Now for the inside part, can't really do the haze because the letters are not connected, but I wanted to do something too, because to me now it's just too plain. So I'm just going to add some random dots after I do haze on the money. If the words were a little bit more connected, I probably could have done them more so on that, but it just wouldn't have looked right. So I just didn't do it. So we're just going to haze our little money here again. And then we'll go and do the other dollar bill. Now we're just really doing like the top sides of it, just to add that little bit of hint of color. And like you said, I think it just opens it up that a little bit more detail was put into the card, and it just opens up so there's not so much stark whiteness. You always want to balance your positive space and your negative space, and this I think helps balance it a lot more than you can see the lone dollar bill to the left right there. It just looks like it's just stamped there. It's not really grounded. I don't know why I use that word, but that's the word that comes to me. It's not as grounded as the others, and it just does not look like it belongs so much as to when you add these other little details on the cards. But again, this is all personal preferences. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it. I don't always like things, you know, that other people might do on certain crafts they look great. It's just not something aesthetically to me that I might prefer. So you just do what you're comfortable with and what end result you're trying to go for. Okay, so now our money all has a cute little haze. And I could just stop right there, but I am going to add a little bit of some of the colors that are from the front of the card to the inside as well. So I am just going to take that Y35 and I'm just going to add some random dots just to tie in some of the colors from the back of the inside of the card to the front of the card, because I really like when everything is cohesive. When you're doing dots, if you hold your pen at a 90-degree angle to your paper, you're going to get a much finer dot than if you're on an angle. You'll get more of an oval dot as opposed to a circle dot. And this is something that you can practice with on scrap sheets of paper, and the pressure of your pouncing is also going to make the size of your dot different. So when you're using light colors, it's not so important because a lot of them blend together. But if you're doing some darker colors, you definitely want to practice and have a fresh nib on your marker, because big, blotchy, dark colors don't look like dots. They just look like a melded mess of ink, like a blob. So you definitely, when using the darker colors, you want to have a little bit more control, use them a little bit more sporadically, and definitely use them more on the fine tip of your nib, so that they look like dots again and not a glob of ink that fell off of your marker. And I'm sure we've all had that happen to us at one point or another, when our Copic marker was a little bit too juicy and an ink blob fell out. So there is just our little added dimension to the inside of our card and to match our outside. So now we have our card base that you also got in your kit. And we are just basically going to start assembling. So these are our new Slimline card bases. We sell these in the shop. They go perfect with our Slimline dies. So you're going to take your mat and you're going to figure out where you want the inside to go. You can have it on the left side, and then you can have your, your handwritten part of your card there. You could put it on the right side and you can do it there. That's just a personal preference as well too. And if just glue it to whichever side of your card you prefer. And then we also, let's see, we're going to take our glue, and I'm just going to apply some liquid glue to the back of my front mat. And I like liquid glue because it has the time for you to have some wiggle room in there if you don't get it on exactly straight. And so we are just going to mount it as straight as we can into the center of the base of our card. And then our inside, I'm going to go ahead and put it on the right hand side. This is a great card for birthdays or graduation, and you can turn this into a money card or a gift card holder super easily by just adding a little pocket to the opposite side of the inside of your card, depending on where you put your sentiment. So I am just trying to wiggle this to get it straight. So there is that. And now you also got one of our Slimline Frames as a die cut in your kit that will just fit right on top of our colored image. We have 5 frames for Slimline dies. We have, this is the basic stitched frame. We have a pretty inside scalloped frame. We have a polka dot, we have a chevron, and we have a rectangle. And they all fit inside our card bases really well. So I'm just now going to line that up on top of my card base. It leaves a little bit of a border around your card, well, the frame, and so you still see the border of your card, which is super cute. We are just going to glue that in place. The glue dries clear, so I don't even ever worry if I make a mess, which I always do. But there is our cute little card, and at this point you would be finished with your project and just stick it in the envelope that came with it. But if you wanted to, like I said before, you could turn this into a gift card holder by adding like a pocket. You would just want to measure how wide, and I believe it's 3 inches, and by how tall you wanted it to be. So, and I'll just show you really quick. This is nothing fancy. You guys would make a much cuter pocket, I'm sure, if you did it. But if you were to just grab a scrap piece of paper, a rectangle scrap piece of paper, I think I just made this like 3 inches by 1.5. I didn't measure it, I'm sorry. And whatever height that you end up making it, depending if you're making it hold money or if you're making it hold a gift card, just measure it up against your gift card first so you can see how much of it you actually want poking out. And then you're just going to double side tape 3 sides of your little pocket that you're making, the 2 short sides and then the 1 long bottom side. Again, just measure out whatever you are looking for yours to be. Some people want, you know, a good chunk of a gift card to show through so they could see what company it's from. Some people like none of it to show except for just a little lip that they know, like, oh, pull this out and something's in there. So you would just want to measure that and figure what you need. I should have made mine a little bit taller, but I didn't think that. And I probably would have decorated this if I was keeping it as a gift card holder as well. And then you can just take your card and stick it in this little pocket. So obviously if this was a little bit taller, up to maybe where it covered most of the pancakes, it would have looked a lot cuter. But you get the idea. So you can turn this into, you know, a money holder or however you want for, again, a birthday, anniversary, graduation, or just, you know, somebody that wants money. So that is our completed card. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you on the flip side. Bye.